My name is Lilith. I'm 32 years old, living in Seattle, working as a risk manager for a major insurance firm, and I'm a single mom to a 6-year-old boy named Aiden. The day I was rushed into the hospital for emergency appendicitis surgery, just as I signed the consent form, my mother texted me one sentence. "We're busy with Chloe's party, don't bother us." Chloe is my younger sister. Me. I was just the placeholder until they had someone more impressive to brag about. Have you ever called someone in desperation hoping for the smallest sign of care, only to be met with absolute coldness from the person who brought you into this world? If you've ever felt like the backup plan in your own family, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. Because the story I'm about to tell isn't just about the pain of being left behind. It's about the strength to stand back up, expose the lies, and redefine what family truly means. I don't remember the exact day I got placed behind my sister, only that the feeling came early and never left me throughout childhood. My family lived in a small 2-story house in the northern suburbs of Seattle, with neatly trimmed grass and a white wall filled with photos of Chloe. Chloe at ballet class, Chloe in a purple princess dress, Chloe smiling next to a triple-layer birthday cake. My photo sat in a small frame behind a cactus on the hallway shelf. I'm 3 years older than Chloe. While I was still struggling to learn how to tie my own shoelaces, my mom bought Chloe light-up automatic shoes, showering her with endless praise. "Look at this girl," she'd say. "Born to be the center of attention." I heard that line so many times, it became the background noise of our house. Every time Chloe walked into a room, it was like a spotlight turned on. No matter how hard I tried, I was always stuck backstage. When I was 12, I won first place in the district science fair. I spent weeks building a solar energy conversion model, crafting each display board by hand, rehearsing my presentation. When I brought the certificate home, my mom barely glanced at it and asked, "Did Chloe do well at ballet today?" My dad gave me a distracted "good job, kid," then turned to ask Chloe what she wanted for dinner. I stood there silently, still holding my award, then quietly folded it and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. It stayed there until the day I moved out. I got used to Chloe getting more. My birthdays were usually a grocery store cake, a few paper hats, and a simple grilled dinner. Chloe's birthdays were a whole production. For her 8th, my mom hired a balloon artist, set up a pink fabric tent in the backyard, and ordered a custom Elsa fondant cake with 3 layers. They invited Chloe's entire class, plus the parents, and even hired a professional photographer to capture every moment. I was assigned to stand next to the gift table and record who gave what. I remember clearly the year I started high school. I made it onto the state honor roll. I came home with my report card, excited, thinking maybe, just maybe, this time they'd notice. But as soon as I opened my mouth, Mom cut in. "Chloe just got the lead role in the winter play." She was so nervous she almost cried. Dad shook his head, beaming. "Now that's our girl, born to shine." I closed the report card, smiled politely, and walked to the kitchen for a glass of water, hoping no one saw the redness in my eyes. I never blamed Chloe. She was once a sweet, innocent little girl. We used to build pillow forts together, tell ghost stories in the dark, and hide under the table during blackouts. But year after year, all the favoritism taught Chloe that everything could be hers with a pout or a whimper. She got used to being first, being protected from all consequences, while I became the one quietly cleaning up after her chaos. I remember one evening, Chloe cried uncontrollably after getting rejected from an audition. My mom held her like she'd lost someone dear, whispering, "You're special. It's their fault for not seeing that, not yours." That same year, I missed the deadline for an art scholarship because I was busy helping Chloe finish a class project. When I mentioned it, Mom just shrugged. "It's in the past, don't make a big deal out of it." The only time I ever saw my mom cry was when Chloe boarded a plane for her study abroad program in France. She stood at the airport, clutching her scarf, tears running non-stop. "She'll be halfway across the world," she sobbed to my dad. But when I got married to Travis 3 years later, Mom showed up almost an hour late, because she had a spa appointment with Chloe. During the entire reception, she spoke more with the catering staff than with me. As I walked down the aisle, she was too busy adjusting Chloe's bridesmaid dress to even look up. I used to believe that if I was patient enough, worked hard enough, one day I'd earn the kind of look they reserved only for Chloe. But as the years passed, that belief wore thin. I grew quieter, more independent. I poured myself into every grade, every opportunity, and stopped letting anyone see how badly I still longed to be loved. Because in that house, love wasn't given equally. It revolved around one name. Me. I was just the shadow. I met Travis shortly after turning 25. He was a freshly graduated architect, full of passion with a smile that softened people and eyes that really listened. We met at a young professionals seminar in Seattle. When the event ended, I was checking my work email when he walked up, handed me a hot coffee and said, "I'm guessing you haven't eaten lunch yet, have you?" That simple opening started what I thought would be the beginning of a beautiful life. We fell into a quiet kind of love. Travis wasn't overly expressive, but he was gentle and thoughtful. I loved sitting with him while he sketched homes he dreamed of building for real families. I loved the way he encouraged me to apply for a leadership position when I turned 26. Back then, Travis felt like the first person who saw my worth. Not as Chloe's shadow or the responsible eldest, but as me. We got married after almost 2 years of dating. A small, intimate wedding in a friend's backyard. No fireworks, no designer dresses. Just white daisies, acoustic music, and a promise to stay together through strength and weakness. I believed in that promise. I believed this love wouldn't be measured in comparisons, wouldn't fracture with ambition, wouldn't bend to favoritism. Aiden was born a year later. A boy with deep brown eyes and a steady gaze just like his father. I used to think that becoming a mom would let me relive the childhood I never got. But maybe I dreamed too much. The first time I held him, sore and exhausted from surgery, Travis was sitting with his back to us, eyes glued to his phone. Travis tried during the first few months. He stayed up with me some nights, made bottles, changed diapers, and took Aiden to the pediatrician. But after 3 months, he started coming home late. "The project's almost done," he said. "I have to triple-check the final drafts." I believed him. I wanted to. I learned to juggle my packed schedule and still be home by 6 p.m. to bathe Aiden, feed him, and sing him to sleep with lullabies I don't even remember learning. When I was promoted to regional risk manager, Travis wasn't as excited as I had hoped. I remember holding out the promotion letter, grinning, and he barely looked at it before saying, "Good for you. Just don't let the job take over everything." It sounded harmless, but it felt like a warning. I started noticing his expression when I answered calls during dinner or checked emails before bed. Something in his eyes, distant, disengaged, made me feel like I was slowly stepping out of the future he once drew. I tried. I canceled a major conference in Chicago to visit his parents in Tacoma with Aiden. I cut back on overtime, hired help around the house, and carved out space for us. But the more I tried, the more I felt like I was apologizing for succeeding. Then one night, while reviewing project expenses, I got a notification from the bank. Our credit card had exceeded its limit. I stared blankly at the transaction list. Restaurant bills, designer boutiques, boutique hotels in Portland. None of them had anything to do with me. I called the bank for a full statement. Travis's name kept showing up. I didn't want to believe it. But the evidence was undeniable. He had used our joint credit card to fund dates with another woman. Worse, I discovered he had emptied our emergency fund, 3 years of careful savings, enough to support Aiden and me for at least 6 months if anything went wrong. I waited for him to come home. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. Aiden was fast asleep in the next room. I sat in the living room, bank statements spread on the table, warm yellow light falling across my face in the glass. When Travis walked in about to say something, I simply raised a hand. He sat down, eyes darting around like looking for an escape. I pushed the first paper toward him. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. Then he finally spoke. I don't know what to say. "Start with the truth," I said, my voice eerily calm. "She's a client." It started with a few work lunches. And ended with nights at a hotel? Travis lowered his head. I didn't scream, didn't throw a glass or rip up the papers. I just sat there looking at the man who once vowed to protect this family. He bowed his head like a child caught red-handed without a full apology, just scattered excuses. I don't remember exactly what I said after that. I only know that the next morning, before the sun had even risen, I got up to make Aiden's bottle, gathered the paperwork, and headed straight to the attorney's office. My marriage, and whatever last illusion I had of an ideal family, ended with a divorce packet, a stamp, and a quiet promise. I will never let my son grow up in an environment like the one I came from. As I worked with the attorney to finalize the divorce, I had to review all the shared assets between me and Travis. Most of the documents were straightforward. The apartment was under my name, the personal savings account was mine, and the recent debts were mostly from credit cards in his name. But then I came across a thick folder related to a commercial loan. And there, in the guarantor section, I saw my mother's name. I frowned, thinking I had misread. I flipped through each page again to be sure. But there it was, in unmistakable ink, my mother's signature. Evelyn Morgan, listed as the guarantor for the business loan that funded Travis's architecture firm, the one he had proudly told me about more than a year ago. My heart skipped a beat. My mother. The same woman who always told me I needed to handle everything on my own because the eldest daughter must know how to be independent. The same woman who refused to co-sign my college loan application. The one who once told me, money should never compromise your values, had quietly signed off to back a loan worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for my husband, without saying a single word to me. I left the attorney's office and drove straight to her house. The same two-story home with the wisteria trellis in the front yard was just as quiet as it always was when I visited. I walked up the front steps and knocked 3 times. My mother opened the door, her eyes still glued to her phone. "Oh, Lilith," she said, barely lifting her head. "Didn't expect you to drop by. Why did you co-sign a loan for Travis?" I asked directly, no small talk. This time she looked up fully. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with indifference. "That doesn't concern you. Travis had a solid idea and needed support. I saw potential, so I helped." "Doesn't concern me?" I repeated, my voice raspy with anger. "He was my husband. You didn't think I should know when you gave financial backing to the man living under the same roof as me?" My mother crossed her arms, her gaze cold, like I was a child interrupting her mid-nap. "You're always so sensitive. I saw drive in Travis and chose to support it. Must I report everything I do to you now?" I laughed, a sound that came out more like a choke. "You took Chloe prom dress shopping, signed every study abroad paper for her. Me? I had to fight for every scholarship. Now my husband cheats and you back him financially too." She didn't respond. She turned her face away like the whole conversation was just a nuisance on a slow winter afternoon. I walked away without another word. On the drive home, I opened my email to send a few documents to my attorney, when I noticed a new message from Chloe. The subject line was simple: "Don't be too surprised." The email itself was just one paragraph. "You think Mom cares about you? She helped Travis because he's the one with real potential. She said you'd be fine on your own. Don't think being a director makes her proud. You've always just been the backup option in this family." I put the phone down on the passenger seat. My throat tightened like someone had wrapped a hand around it. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Maybe because the tears I once had for this family had long since run dry. That day I sat at my desk and opened my personal planner. In red pen I wrote one single line: "No more support or involvement from my side of the family from this day forward." I called the attorney and confirmed I'd seek full custody of Aiden. I wouldn't let my family interfere again. I canceled all visits, cut unnecessary ties, and moved Aiden into a smaller apartment near a local park, where he could run free every afternoon and sleep peacefully in a home free from words that cut like knives into memory. Each night, I read to Aiden with the softest voice I could manage, even when my own heart still carried wounds I hadn't yet stitched closed. I never mentioned his grandmother or Aunt Chloe. I never told him that not one of my relatives had checked in since his father left. I simply kept one silent vow in my chest: I would do everything in my power to make sure my son never had to grow up on the sidelines like I once did. In one very quiet moment after I'd turned off the bedroom lights and looked back at him curled up, hugging his old stuffed tiger, I whispered to myself, "It's okay. As long as I have him, I have enough. The people who chose to side with the one who hurt me, they're no longer my family. They're just memories. And I'm learning to walk away from them one steady, unregretful step at a time." The apartment I rented was on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building about 15 minutes from downtown. The metal staircase groaned with each step as I carried Aiden upstairs. The wooden floors were faded, and the kitchen was barely big enough for a table that seated 2. But the windows faced east and caught the morning light, and the tiny balcony was just enough space to grow a few pots of mint and lavender. That was all I needed, a peaceful home untouched by the past. I started over from scratch. No family. No emergency savings. No other option but to succeed. I woke up at 5:30 every morning to make breakfast for Aiden, drop him off at daycare and rush into the office before the sun hit its peak. Each evening I picked him up, cooked dinner, did laundry, cleaned and squeezed in reading documents while he played or slept. I couldn't afford to get sick. Couldn't be late. There was no one to call if I collapsed. Everything rested on my shoulders and I learned to carry it like it was just part of my skin. Luckily at work I had Grace. She was nearly 10 years older than me, the head of strategic projects, and the first one to hand me a cup of coffee when I returned after the divorce. Grace had soft brown eyes and a gentle voice, but no one in the office dared underestimate her. I'll never forget the first time she found out I was raising Aiden on my own. She gave me a reassuring pat and said, "If you ever need someone to watch Aiden on a weekend so you can rest or clean, just say the word. My son just started college. I miss having a little one around." And she meant it. Every weekend, Aiden went to Grace's house. She had a fluffy dog named Charlie, a backyard full of apple trees, and a living room with a fireplace that always stayed warm in the winter. Aiden loved going there. He once told me, "Auntie Grace tells better stories than you, and Charlie can catch a ball in midair." I didn't feel hurt. I knew he was loved there. And I had a few hours to handle errands or just breathe. At work, things became intense. Leadership mandated a complete overhaul of our risk assessment systems within 6 months. Several people backed out, afraid of how failure might reflect on their records. I sat in the meeting that day, stared at the blank spot on the assignment board, then slowly raised my hand. "I'll take it," I said. All heads turned toward me. The regional director, Mr. James, furrowed his brow. "Lilith, are you sure? This project will be high pressure." I nodded. "I can do it." And I did. I broke every process into manageable pieces, rebuilt evaluation templates, coordinated with teams across 3 states, and ran data simulations late into the night while Aiden slept next to me with his iPad on mute. Some nights I was so exhausted I stood under the hot shower, unable to feel truly awake. But every time I saw my son sleeping peacefully in his little bed pressed up against the wall, I clenched my fist and reminded myself to keep going. 3 months later, the results exceeded expectations. Not only did we complete the restructure on time, but we also uncovered and prevented 3 potential loopholes that could have caused millions in losses if left unchecked. James walked into my office late one afternoon, holding a thick file and a rare smile. "I submitted your nomination for Regional Risk Director this morning," he said. "The leadership team in San Francisco was deeply impressed with how you handled the project." I sat there in silence for a moment. Not out of shock, but because I knew I had done everything I could. I looked out the window. Light rain tapped gently against the glass, slowing as if to give me space to breathe. I thought of my small apartment, the simple kitchen, Grace and Charlie, and the nights I read to Aiden under the spinning ceiling fan. "I'm grateful for the opportunity," I said. "And I'm ready for what comes next." James nodded. "You're not just technically skilled, Lilith. You bring people together. That's what makes you stand out." That night, I picked up a small cake shaped like a star and brought it home. When Aiden saw the cake, his eyes lit up. "Is it my birthday, Mom?" I laughed and pulled him into a hug. "No, honey. Tonight I'm celebrating something else. I got promoted." Aiden wrapped his arms around my neck and whispered, "Then can we get more paint colors?" I nodded, my eyes welling up but still smiling. "Yes, baby. We can even get an easel if you want." I had come a long way. From a woman trembling in a divorce attorney's waiting room to someone who could look a regional director in the eye and say, "I'll take it." I didn't know what the future held. But at least for now, my son and I no longer had to bow our heads for anyone. And that, to me, was a victory. My new house was in a quiet neighborhood north of Seattle, with a white picket fence and a small garden where Aiden could grow a few rows of young tomatoes. I chose it not just because it was near the private school he'd just been accepted into, but also because the afternoon light streamed through the kitchen window, landing right on the dining table where I imagined us coloring homework or baking cookies on weekends. Every inch of that house was built by my own hands. No one else helped, no one co-signed, and not a single dollar came from my mother's side of the family. On moving day, Grace brought flowers, Charlie ran in circles around the front yard, and Aiden bounced with excitement over having his own room with a window facing the playground. That first night, We ate boxed pizza on the floor because the dining table hadn't arrived yet. Aiden leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "This house smells better than the old one, doesn't it, Mom?" I nodded, unsure if I should be grateful or heartbroken that my child had gotten so used to less that normal things now felt special. 2 weeks later, my mother showed up. No call, no warning. She appeared at my doorstep with a gift bag in one hand and a box of chocolate in the other, never once remembering whether I liked it or was allergic. My dad stood behind her, shirt buttoned all the way up, holding a bottle of red wine like he was dropping in on old neighbors. "Lilith," my mom spoke first, smiling like there had never been any cold estrangement between us. "You moved and didn't tell me a thing." I stood firmly in the doorway. "Because I didn't think you'd care." "What a strange thing to say," my dad cut in, voice as soft as a breeze. "You're our daughter. No matter what happens, blood is blood." I didn't answer. I looked down at Aiden clinging to my shirt. He looked up at his grandparents, confused, and softly said, "Grandpa, Grandma." My mother immediately bent down with open arms. "Aiden, my sweet boy. My goodness, how big you've gotten. So handsome." Aiden giggled and ran into her arms like he hadn't been ignored for years. My throat tightened, but I stepped aside and let them in. That afternoon tea was awkward. My parents complimented the house, praised the quiet neighborhood, asked about Aiden's new school, and glanced at their watches now and then. I sat across from them, stirring my tea steadily, saying nothing. I wanted to see how far they'd go in this new performance. Then my mother started talking about rebuilding connections, that we're still family after all, how she missed her grandson, and that it's time to mend things. I didn't respond. I just smiled politely, my gaze colder than the tea in my cup. 3 days later, Chloe showed up. The perfect younger sister with her sweet smile and melodic voice. She came alone, without a bouquet or designer bag. "How have you been?" she asked, scanning the house like she was assessing the setup. "It's beautiful. I like how you placed the armchair by the window. Must be peaceful looking out." I set my coffee cup down, saying nothing. I waited. "Actually," she continued, voice softening, "Zach and I are separated now. He's not living at home anymore. I'm looking for a temporary place. Probably have to rent for a while we sort out the asset division. But with prices these days, it's a bit tight. I was wondering if maybe you could lend me something. Just short term. I'll pay you back when things settle." I nodded slowly. "How much?" "About 60,000. Enough for a small down payment near downtown." I rested my elbows on the table, looking straight at my sister. "You think I have 60,000 just lying around to loan you?" Chloe gave a sheepish smile. "You're a director now. This house isn't cheap. I figured you were doing okay." "I'm okay because I worked hard. Not because Mom helped. Not because anyone co-signed for me. And definitely not because someone handed me anything." Chloe froze. She lifted her cup but didn't drink. I continued, voice low and steady. "I once needed a signature to apply for a scholarship. Remember that? Mom refused. But she co-signed for Travis, the man who cheated on me. And you emailed me mocking that I had no future." Chloe lowered her head, gripping her cup. "I was young. Stupid. I didn't understand. Do you understand now?" I stood, clearing the half-eaten cookies. "Money isn't the problem. Trust is. And you broke it." Chloe rose too, lips twitching like she wanted to say something but finally just nodded. "I'm sorry," she whispered, then left. That night, while I was reading a book to Aiden before bed, he turned and asked, "Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa come over? Do they love me?" I paused for a few seconds. "I think they're trying to do what they think is right. But sometimes people come around because they need something. Not because of love." Aiden was quiet, then nodded. They smiled, but their eyes didn't look like Aunt Grace's. I pulled the blanket up to his shoulders and kissed his forehead. A quiet unease rose in my chest. Because with people like my parents and Chloe, every kindness felt like the prelude to something calculated. I collapsed right in the middle of the sixth-floor conference room, while presenting our quarterly report to the entire executive board. My vision blurred, sharp cramps twisted through my abdomen, and sweat poured from me even though the air conditioning was on. I don't remember who caught me as I slumped into the chair, just Grace's voice, alarmed and firm. "Call an ambulance. Now." The paramedics rushed me to the nearest memorial hospital. While the doctors ran emergency tests, I struggled to sit up and text Grace. My voice trembled over the phone. Please, pick up Aiden for me. He gets out at 2:30. I still remember she didn't hesitate for even a second. Don't worry. I've got Aiden. You focus on surgery. I lay there in a sterile white hospital bed, for needle deep in my arm, cold fluorescent lights glaring down. The doctor told me it was a complicated appendicitis case and I needed emergency surgery, immediately or it would rupture. In that moment of panic, all I could think about was my son. I had to make sure Aiden was safe. After I hung up with Grace, I scrolled through my contacts, finger trembling as I tapped Mom. It rang 4 times before she picked up. Mom, I'm at the hospital. I need emergency surgery. Appendicitis. Can you please pick up Aiden for me? His school is. I didn't get to finish. She cut me off, clearly in the middle of something. No can do. I'm busy with Chloe's birthday party. I haven't even done my makeup yet. Over 50 guests are coming. Can't you ask someone else? I bit down hard. There is no one else. Please, Mom. I can't leave Aiden at school. She sighed loudly into the phone like I was an inconvenience. Lilith, you need to understand. Your child is your responsibility. Don't expect others to carry that burden for you. Your dad and I are old. We can't be running around babysitting every time you get tired. I was speechless, only hearing the background music from the party faintly through the phone. She added something about a 3-tier cake and flowers imported from San Diego, then ended with, "That boy makes a mess whenever he touches anything in the house. I don't want any more chaos." The call ended with a cold click. I lay still, tears streaming down my cheeks, not from stomach pain but from my heart breaking into pieces. The surgery happened that very night. When I woke up, the first person I saw was Grace. She was sitting by my bed holding a steaming paper cup of coffee. "You're awake?" The doctor said everything's fine. But you'll need to be monitored for at least 2 days. Don't worry, Aiden's with me. The kids are building a fort in the living room. I couldn't respond, my throat tightened. I turned away, not wanting Grace to see my tears. But she gently pulled the blanket up, placed her hand on my shoulder and squeezed softly like always. The next evening, Grace sent me a video. I opened it silently. On the small screen, Aiden, his hair messy, stood by the stove, stirring a pot of soup with a wooden spoon. Grace's daughter, Riley, stood next to him, wearing an apron twice her size, laughing as Aiden said, "Mom loves this soup. I'll make it for her when she gets home." I watched the 2 kids running around the kitchen, Riley shouting, "Police, catch the thief," and Aiden yelling, "Hide in the oven." I couldn't hold back the sobs. I cried for all the times I tried to make my son feel he wasn't lacking. I cried because in the darkest moments, it was someone not even blood-related who opened their arms to care for us, while the one called biological mother turned away coldly over a party. I had never shown weakness in front of my son, but that night, alone in the hospital bed, I let myself break down. And in that breaking, I saw the truth I'd long avoided. The affection they had for me, if any, only lasted as long as it suited their interests. I had always wondered if one day my mother would truly need me. For me, not as a source of money, a temporary replacement, or a helping hand. Turns out she wouldn't. I placed the phone on my chest and closed my eyes. Though my memory was hazy from anesthesia, I still remembered Aiden's laughter in that video. In that little world, there was no glamorous stage, no red wine or 3-tier cake, just 2 children and a warm kitchen. The day I was discharged, Grace picked me up in her car. The back seat was already set with a bag of food, some medication, and a brand new set of pajamas. Aiden stayed by my side all afternoon, his tiny hand holding mine tightly. I looked at my son, feeling something both painful and clear. I had gone too far trying to hold on to relationships that never really existed. But I wasn't turning back. That night, after Aiden was sound asleep in his room, I sat at my computer. The warm kitchen light reflected off the screen displaying my bank statements. I reviewed every automatic payment. The car loan for my parents, credit card fees Chloe racked up using my name, and small bills like electricity, water, and roof repairs, all still under my name from when I was trying to keep the peace. My hand slowly moved the mouse over each line. Then I clicked cancel. I didn't feel relief right away. Honestly, I felt empty, as if I had just cut a thread that had long worn thin but still held me out of habit. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7:30. My mom called first. I didn't answer. Then my dad. A minute later, Chloe. By noon, while I was reheating chicken soup for Aiden, the phone buzzed again. A text from my mom. Are you okay cutting off payments mid-month? Your dad and I lost the car. It was towed this morning. Do you want us to be embarrassed in front of the neighbors? I set the phone down on the kitchen counter and sighed. I wasn't angry. Not sad either. Just drained. That night, I got an email from Chloe. Subject: You're really heartless. The message was just a few lines, but each word squeezed my heart. You cut off money suddenly and I didn't have time to prepare. Zach left home. He said I can't manage money or be a wife. I'm alone with 3 months' rent unpaid. I have nothing left. I'm your own sister. How can you be so cruel? I read it through without replying immediately. I set it aside, washed dishes, bathed Aiden, read to him. When things settled, I returned to my desk, opened my laptop and typed. I'm not heartless. I just don't want to keep buying my place in a family that has no room for me. Zach's choices are yours. They're no longer my concern. I hit send, shut down the computer, locked my phone and put it away. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without being woken by ringing phones or desperate messages. The next 3 days my phone was flooded with missed calls. My parents left countless voicemail messages. My mom's voice was both tearful and reproachful. What kind of daughter is so ungrateful? I raised you for 20 years and now when I need a little help you turn your back. My dad's voice was sharp and deliberate. You've disgraced the whole family. The car was repossessed, bills are overdue and the neighbors are gossiping. Are you happy now? Neither of them mentioned that I was in the hospital. Didn't ask if I survived surgery. Didn't ask what Aiden ate, where he slept, or who took care of him during those 2 days I was gone. To them, the only things that mattered were the car, their pride, and what the neighbors thought. I listened to some messages, then deleted them. I stopped caring. I just found it strange that for so many years I thought I was holding on to a family. But in reality I was just paying for silence. On Sunday, Grace stopped by with a warm apple pie, Charlie barking loudly in the backyard. Riley brought her watercolor set and invited Aiden to paint the garden scene at my house. I made tea and sat on the back porch watching the kids excitedly color on the paper. Grace sat beside me, silent for a moment, then softly asked, "Have you told them yet?" I shook my head. No. And I don't think I need to. She nodded gently. Some relationships, when you stop, you realize you can finally breathe again after a long time. I looked at my son, smiling brightly as he painted the roof blue, his hands stained with paint and eyes shining like the late afternoon sun. I didn't know how many peaceful moments I'd missed chasing approval from people who never truly wanted to see me happy. But now I understood more than ever. Sometimes to really live you have to learn to stop. Not because you're weak but because you've been strong for too long. I completed the process to change Aiden's last name one cool spring morning. The sun was casting golden light across the courthouse steps. The paperwork had been prepared beforehand, just waiting for my signature. My son's new name would be Aiden Morgan. No longer Travis's last name, no memory binding him to things neither of us wanted to keep. As I walked out of the building, my son sat on a stone bench beside Grace and Riley, holding a gummy candy, swinging his legs rhythmically. Seeing me approach, Aiden jumped up, ran over, looking up expectantly. "Did you finish, Mom?" His breath mixed with the breeze. I bent down, stroked his hair and nodded. "Yes. From now on you're Aiden Morgan. Like me." Aiden grinned, squeezing me tight. "I like this name better. It's the same. Like a team." Grace stood next to me, smiling softly, her eyes quietly warm. She said nothing but placed a hand on my shoulder. A silent congratulations. A few weeks later, I enrolled Aiden in a weekend children's art class at the local community center near our home. Riley had been attending that class since last year, so the two quickly became inseparable partners. The teacher, Miss Martin, was a middle-aged woman with curly gray hair and a voice as gentle as if she were telling a fairy tale. Aiden adored her. After each class, he'd bring home a pile of watercolor paintings, mostly big suns, crooked houses, bright green trees, and smiling cats and dogs. I never criticized those messy paintings. I taped each one on the kitchen wall so that every morning while eating his cereal, Aiden would look up and see them. I wanted him to know that even a playful stroke of paint has value if it's made with love. As Aiden's 7th birthday approached, he told me, "Mom, can we have the party at home this year?" I want chocolate cake and Aunt Grace. I sat down next to him and gently asked, don't you want to invite Grandma, Grandpa, or Aunt Chloe? He shook his head. No. They're not real family. I stayed quiet, feeling my heart being soothed somehow. My child, though still small, had recognized what took me decades to understand. I began preparing the small birthday party. Grace took charge of baking the cake. Riley and I folded colorful streamers and hand-wrote each invitation to close neighbors and a few close colleagues. Charlie, the dog from Grace's house, was also invited, wearing a paper party hat with his name taped on his forehead. That day, my backyard was decorated with blue balloons, striped tablecloths, and a wooden chalkboard sign that read, "Happy Birthday, Aiden." I didn't hire a photographer, didn't call caterers, and there was no entertainment program. Just laughter, paper plates piled with cookies, and a two-tiered cake made by Grace, covered with strawberries and chocolate shavings. Aiden beamed the entire time. He played tag with Riley, built forts from cardboard boxes with classmates, and hugged me as everyone sang, "Happy Birthday." Sitting there in the afternoon sunlight, watching him blow out the candles with rosy cheeks from running around, I knew I was living a moment no money could ever buy. That night, after the guest had left and I was cleaning up the last plastic cups, Aiden ran over holding a drawing. "Mom, I made this in class. Martin told us to finish it at home. I'm done." I wiped my hands and took it. It was a family portrait. Still rough, colors bleeding outside the lines but full of life. In the middle was me wearing a yellow dress. To the right, Aiden in a red shirt with a lightning bolt. To the left, Grace wearing a flowered apron, and Riley holding an ice cream cone. Next to them was Charlie wearing a birthday hat with his long tongue out. At the top, scribbled in purple crayon, were the words, "My real family." I held the drawing tight, my chest tightening. No grandma. No grandpa. No Chloe. No Travis. Just the people who truly stood by my son, and me when we needed them most. "You drew this beautifully," I said, my voice trembling a bit. "I'm going to hang this in the highest spot in the house." Aiden smiled. "Because we're a team, remember?" I nodded and hugged him. In that moment, all the broken pieces of my life seemed to fit together into a complete picture. Not the family I was born into, but the family I chose. And I would protect it with everything I have. That day was cool with soft sunlight. The final exhibition day of the art class Aiden had attended for 3 months. I wore a chestnut-colored sweater and a gray scarf, holding my son's hand as we entered the community center. The gallery wasn't large but was filled with colors, the smell of watercolors and craft paper, and soft music playing from a speaker in the corner. Each student had 1 or 2 featured works displayed on their personal board. Riley stood near hers, waving at Aiden from a distance. The two ran over, whispered something, and giggled. I slowed down to look at each painting, each introduction handwritten in childlike letters. Some painted space scenes, some superheroes, others a lakeside house with a small boat. But I paused when I saw Aiden's painting. The white paper was slightly curved from thick watercolor layers, carefully mounted on gray backing. The painting showed a house with a red roof, green trees on both sides, and 5 people standing in front. Me, Aiden, Grace, Riley, and Charlie waving. Above, a scribbled line read, "My real family." The teacher called each student up to present their work. When it was Aiden's turn, he took a deep breath and stepped in front of everyone, standing straight with his hands folded in front of him like he'd rehearsed many times. "This is the painting I made of my real family," Aiden began, still with a slight childlike lisp but surprisingly clear and confident. "Real family isn't always people with the same name or blood. It's the people who are there for you when you need them the most." The room fell silent for a few seconds before a few soft "ahs" and scattered applause filled the space. I stood behind the crowd, holding my bag, my throat tight. No one looked back at me, but I felt like the whole world in that moment focused through one single gaze, the eyes I fixed on my son. Grace stood beside me, gently squeezing my hand without saying a word. I turned to her, smiled softly, but my eyes were stinging. "You heard that," I whispered. "My son just said what took me a lifetime to understand." She nodded. "I heard. And I'm proud of you." The exhibition ended with laughter and chatter. On the way home, Aiden sat in the back seat, clutching his drawing board, excitedly talking about Martin's compliments and Riley promising to paint him a calico cat next week. I drove slowly through tree-lined streets, feeling a peacefulness I hadn't known in a long time. That night, just as I sank onto the couch, my phone lit up. A message from Chloe. She didn't call anymore, probably knowing I wouldn't answer, but she still tried to grasp at a faint hope through her words. My parents sold the house. They're staying temporarily with acquaintances, but only for a few weeks. I was denied a rental application because I couldn't prove my income. Can you help? I read each sentence slowly. No apology. Not a single word asking if I was okay, how Aiden was, or how I'd been since surgery. Just, can you help? As if I were an ATM they could withdraw solutions from at the push of a button. I turned off the screen. No reply. I stood and went into Aiden's room. He was asleep, still clutching his comic book, hair falling over his forehead. I sat on the edge of his bed, pulled the blanket up over his shoulders, then leaned down and whispered into his ear, "I choose you. Always." He shifted slightly, lips moving as if answering something in his dreams, his face completely peaceful. I sat there for a long time, listening to his steady breathing and feeling that small warmth touch my heart like a silent heartbeat. I didn't need to answer Chloe. My answer was here. In this home, in every breath of the child I'm raising, in every drawing taped to the wall with simple tape but full of love. What do you think about my story and my son's? Is family really just people with the same blood, or those who are willing to hold your hand when you're weakest, stand by you when the whole world turns away? Maybe everyone has their own definition, but to me, family is where love is unconditional, where children grow up without trading trust for survival. If this story touched something inside you, a memory, a thought, or simply a feeling once vague, please share it in the comments. I want to hear your story because sometimes just knowing you're not alone in that feeling is priceless. And if you want to continue following everyday stories filled with meaning like this, don't forget to subscribe. The next stories will keep opening new perspectives on love, choices, and the journey to find the true meaning of the word family. See you in the next video.